Taylor, it was like briefly, but then it got fine again.
Oh, it was bad. It was bad.
Yeah.
Welcome, everyone, to the Bitchuation Room and the Left Hook power mashup. Welcome, Wajahat Ali, obviously, of the Left Hook. I'm Francesca Fiorentini of the Bitchuation Room. As you see, it's been a couple weeks, Waj, since we've done a Thursday stream. You are constantly streaming with all kinds of people. You're kind of a content slut. I'm just going to be honest with you. You're just like whatever, whoever, whenever, wherever, Shakira style, you know?
I'm very open. I'm about expansionism.
You're poly.
Yeah, I'm very poly when it comes to my Substack tastes. Very traditional when it comes to the other tastes. But I know I think this also means I'm a child of immigrants, and I don't know when to say no. I was like, it was Labor Day weekend, and I was like, oh, it's
Time
calm.
to work.
I should work. And I'm like, and then literally as I'm working, like as I'm doing the Substack live, I'm like, I should just not be working, but here I am. I think we're built a certain way, which is not healthy.
Yeah. I have a little more work-life balance, but also I'm allergic to money. Become a patron, patreon.com/bitchuation room. Become a paid subscriber of the Left Hook. Again, Waj is doing all this content for free, not behind any paywalls. So support our work. We gotta talk about, I think the theme of this hour is going to be the wars at home and the wars abroad. At least on the war abroad, Waj, we were promised that this was an anti-war president.
America first, right, Francesca?
Yes, there was going to be America first, and we were, I guess, going to maybe stop all wars except for the one that we're perpetuating in the Middle East against the Palestinians, against Lebanon, against Syria, against Yemen, of course, not forget, against Iran. There was that and continues to be, except for all the wars that we are currently fanning the flames of. The wars abroad have largely ceased.
Yeah, the 35,000 strikes that Israel has committed against, like you said, Palestinians, Yemen, Iran, Lebanon, Syria. The fact that Donald Trump got dog-walked by Netanyahu and almost escalated us into World War III with Iran. And even then, the strikes, of course, didn't destroy the nuclear reactors because, of course, it's Donald Trump. And speaking about making America great again, some piece of news that came out, I just told it, Francesca, before we went live, the brand, Francesca, the USA brand, folks, as of today, as a result of Donald Trump's just awesome, exquisite art of the deal, is now in the toilet. American CEOs are saying that the brand of America is toxic all around the world. And the job numbers came out, folks. Lowest August job numbers, Francesca, since, drumroll, 2009. Who's going to get fired? What woman, what black person will he fire?
Oh, yes, exactly. What black people are left after the DEI purge? Who else? Whose other bank records or mortgage statements can we dig into? Yeah, I mean, obviously, Howard Nutlick, as we like to call him, is probably not going to go anywhere. No, that is insane. Like, it took, what was it? It took like 6 months to get back to an economy as bad as the height of the pandemic, like March 2020, April 2020. And now we're back during the Great Recession. Like, those are the job numbers we're putting up here.
And you and I were old, and I mean, it was tough, folks. I remember I was in my 20s. I went through it. Like, we all went through it, if you remember. That was, like Francesca said, the worst recession since the Great Recession. And then Obama came in, inherited that completely corrupt, bankrupt administration, which I thought would be the worst presidency of my lifetime. But America said, hold my Diet Coke. And folks, it wasn't perfect. But nonetheless, of course, because we didn't reform the economic systems, we went through restoration. And then, you know, we got out of it. And this dude, in 7 months with his stupid trade wars, his stupid trade policy that he doubled down on his press conference, right? To make America first, America great. Nope, America straight up last. And also, speaking about, you know, another big piece of news, Francesca, Modi was seen, talking to Putin and also President Xi and also Kim Jong-un. Totally nothing to see there, folks. Nothing to see there. Nothing to be alarmed about.
Wasn't there like a hot mic? I didn't read the article of like of Xi and Putin talking about like like organ transplants to live forever. Like I really want that to be true. I cannot verify that I read that story, but it'd be very funny if just like dictators like sharing their organ transplant secrets, like which sort of, imprisoned ethnic minority are they harvesting organs from to fucking like,
And
make
Francesca's
themselves live
not joking
forever.
because they kind of all do want to live forever. And the broligarchy, they're obsessed with this. Larry Ellison, whose son, David Ellison. Oh, yeah. We can also talk about the Barry Weissfication of CBS News. But Larry
Oh my
Ellison, one of the
God.
richest men in America, straight up, Francesca has said, I shouldn't die. Why should I die? So all these people, she's not kidding. All these
Of all
people
the
want to
people,
live forever.
like, yeah, of all the people, like, we should get together and decide who gets to live forever. Like Penelope Cruz, totally fine with that, obviously, but not these creeps. Before we are joined by hopefully Ken Klippenstein, yeah, I think it's the other thing I want to mention that you mentioned before we went live, was that the economy is also hurting a very strong brand, perhaps a brand that's stronger than the brand of the United States. And that's McDonald's. Tell us the tea when it comes to the breakfast menu.
McDonald's CEO came out today, talked about how the economy ain't doing well, American brands hurting, and furthermore saying that, yeah, this economy right now, if you make more than $100,000, which of course everyone does not, then you might be okay. But if you're the majority of Americans, you're hurting. And people, he said, his own customers are skipping breakfast. They're skipping breakfast or they're eating at home, which is a sign for him that we got to now like rejigger our menu and see what we have to do because A, the brand is toxic, the brand of America, our country. And also the McMuffin, I actually like the McMuffin. People are not appreciating the McMuffin because they can't afford it. The McDonald's
Cannot
base is
afford.
like breakfast, a foundational core of the human American diet. Can I afford it? Nah, let me just skip it.
Yeah. No, I mean, first of all, I support eating a well-balanced, home-cooked breakfast. Let's just state that. But let's also be real and say that the most tastiest of all the McDonald's items, other than I will defend the cone. The cone is the greatest McDonald's item. The other things that are yummy are the breakfast. It's the breakfast. I'm sorry. It's who knows where it's from. It's awful, but it's the tastiest. And of
It
course,
hits the
people aren't.
spot, Francesca.
Hits the
And can I
spot,
also
dog.
say, on behalf of all
People can't.
Muslims, it is incumbent upon me as a sole representative of 1.8 billion people to give a shout out to the McDonald's fish fillet. I've had enough fish fillet sandwiches for 17 lifetimes. Uh,
No,
the
no.
Muslims and the
Wait,
fish fillet are like this,
no. Why
but it's
not the
terrible
chicken sandwich?
because we eat halal, right? So we're halal eaters, so you can eat the fish. So when we were growing up and there were not any halal options in the 80s and 90s, the McDonald's fish fillet was the staple of all Muslim families across America.
That's very okay. So that's a hard pill to swallow, just in general, just given the Islamophobia of this administration. But also, the last time I ate a filet of fish, I actually felt nutrients being sucked from my body
Yeah.
and not get like it was when it just like grabbed everything and I felt ill. I feel like
It turned Muslims Republican, which is why they voted for George W. Bush in 2000. Once we realized it was a soul-sucking parasite, it was not actually a cod of fish. It was like this synthetic creature that just makes you
yes,
dumber.
yes.
And collectively, we're like, all right, enough.
That's amazing. I love this conspiracy that the Filet-O-Fish made Muslims Republican. Ken is trying to connect here. Ken Klippenstein, obviously, investigative journalist with an awesome Substack as well. I wanted to talk to him about these wars at home and abroad. So hopefully he can join us in the next
You
little
mean the
bit.
president just unilaterally deciding that he could just, just kill people from Venezuela without due process? Oh,
Well,
that,
so
yes.
this was 2 days ago, I believe 2 days ago, and this is shared from Donald Trump's Truth Social
A U.S.
site.
military strike on an alleged.
And I'm just going to mute this, but you can watch. And if you're listening, it is a boat. Allegedly, there were 11 people who were murdered. It is in waters between Venezuela and Trinidad. And then, boom, it just gets targeted with a missile strike. We don't know exactly what this was, but the United States obviously has claimed responsibility for it proudly and said this is not going to be the end of it. Here was Trump re-emerging from a weekend where we thought maybe, just maybe he died, but he didn't. And here he is.
Didn't say when we're going in. I have an obligation. This isn't a political thing.
The president blasting the city for failing to control the
Whole right now.
military to combat crime inside the country.
Oh man, I fucked this up. Anyway, he's basically like, they've been bad actors. Here we go.
Notorious Trende Aragua gang were killed in the strike. The president designated that group a foreign terrorist organization earlier this year.
We have a lot of drugs pouring into our country. A lot of things are coming out of Venezuela. So we took it out.
It comes.
So designate a foreign gang, a terrorist organization, and then it sets you up to be able to do these, extrajudicial strikes. There was no discussion, or clearly that was shot down as well. The idea of apprehending this boat, the boat that we don't have independent confirmation was in fact a Tren de Aragua drug smuggling operation. I wanted to bring Ken in now. I think I see him there to talk a little bit about this and his reporting that the U.S. military is going to be going after alleged cartels. Ken, welcome to the Bitchuation Room After Hours special Thursday episode. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing all right. Good to
Dude,
be here.
Thank you for being here.
That was a very NPR intro and a very NPR response. I like that. It was very soothing. It's like, how are you? I'm doing well. How are you? I'm fine. Oh yeah.
He's a lot fiercer on the written word. You get him in person.
I think that's exactly right.
He's a puppy dog. We know this. I sound like Trump. He's a puppy dog. But Ken, this is the news that it feels stupid at this point to just constantly be like, why aren't we talking about blank? Because there is too much to constantly be talking about. But this, killing of 11 people on this boat feels massive. And you've been doing a series of 3 investigative pieces on your Substack about the U.S. military and Northcom and the special operations of Northcom being redirected against cartels in specifically Mexico. But what do you know about this strike, and does this have to do with that refocusing of the U.S. military against drug cartels in Latin America?
Yeah, so a little while ago, I started hearing from people in the military intelligence world that they had been tasked with developing what are called target packages, which is kind of the logistical tracking, tracing, and identifying, patterns of life where targets go, because there's a lot of planning that goes into these things. It's not like the movies where you just snap your fingers and go out and do it.
I thought it was like a signal chat and then you text your wife.
Things are resembling Hollywood more. That being said, they still do need to plot out, when they're doing these things. And as was described to me, they were drafting up all sorts of targets around the same cartel groups that President Trump had designated, put on what's called the Foreign Terrorist Organization list, which is run by the State Department. And so when they took out this boat, this is just one of many target sets that they've created. The question, of course, is, well, why are they being tasked with generating all of these? And you can speculate as to an answer about why, that they've got plans about all this. Now, the specific strike that they carried out, I think they picked one. If you look at it, it was carried out in international waters. And so the backlash that you're going to see from, other nation states is going to be much more attenuated than, for instance, if they did it in Mexico, as it is being considered, and Trump is, happily advertised. And,
Sure.
That would invite all kinds of criticism from their government there. And of course, there's a, strong nationalist independence movement in Mexico that would create a very different calculus. But I think what this is, as surprising as it is, because they haven't done anything like this in decades. Ordinarily, you handle these things as a law enforcement matter rather than a military style strike. What this tells us is that he's willing to use these options that are being developed. And the question is how far along this continuum of provocative decision that would invite the opprobrium of foreign governments like Mexico, is he willing to go? And we don't know the answer to that yet. Hegseth's comments after the strike on Fox News don't inspire much confidence in anyone who
play those.
Yeah, who's hoping that they'll be careful, because he's pretty much come out and just said, hey, this is just the beginning. get ready. So,
Mexico seems a little bit different because, it's an ostensible ally. It's a border ally. Let me get to that comment first, but let's just stick on Venezuela because there's another, massive nationalism in Venezuela, especially when they're being targeted by the imperialists, and the foreign invaders, the United States. It's a country with problems on its own. But when they are threatened, there are people now who are, we talked about this on the show a couple weeks ago, who are enlisting to defend the country. I mean, these are the kinds of remarks that, for example, Donald Trump has been making. This was about a week and a half ago in North Carolina.
How about we're buying oil from Venezuela? When I left, Venezuela was ready to collapse. We would have taken it over. We would have gotten all that oil. It would have been right next door. How about we're buying oil from Venezuela?
There you go.
America
this is
first.
The same line we heard about Iraq. We could have had all that oil. Why didn't we take all the oil? We know Venezuela has massive oil reserves. And this is Trump saying, basically openly saying this would be good for us. I don't know in what world Venezuela is right next door. I'm like, my guy, look at a fucking map. But it's concerning. And I'm going to try to play the clip. But Pete Hegseth effectively was asked by Fox News, do you want regime change in Venezuela? They have dubbed Nicolas Maduro a basically cartel leader. They're calling him, that he's participating in trafficking and whatnot. And he's like, oh, that's an executive decision, but effectively it's not ruled out. Here, let me get this. This is thanks to the wonderful, this guy's name's Ken Klippenstein, and he's got this.
One of these days I'll have good news for you guys, but
one of these days everyone needs to be a subscriber and hopefully a paid one.
He wants to continue to be a narco trafficker, has some decisions to make, and that's all I'll say about that.
Is regime change our goal there?
Well, that's a presidential decision, and we certainly understand the indictment. We understand the $50 million. Anyone would prefer that he would just give himself up, but that's a presidential level decision, and we're prepared with every asset that the American military has.
This is going to get so much worse and so much dumber.
Just say no.
God.
Just lie and say no. But he didn't.
No, he didn't. We're going to use every asset available to us. And again, as you've documented, I mean, I think it gets, in terms of Northern Command now redirection against cartels and registering or calling. I mean, look, in theory, if you call Tren de Aragua of a terrorist organization, and then you falsely say they're taking over buildings in wherever, right? You could target that building. You could missile strike that building. Why wouldn't you? Right. And again,
it's a very serious decision to put somebody on the foreign terrorist organization list that I don't think people completely understand. Because when you hear it, you just think it's that means really bad. But it carries with it a set of policy options and authorities that allows the president to do all sorts of things that you couldn't do if someone wasn't on the FTO list. And there's all kinds of protections against American citizens being on the list because it's understood to be something that can get around constitutional and civil liberties protections that exist. So it's a very serious decision that there was almost no debate about, and which it should be pointed out too. By Trump's predecessor, Biden put them on a different list prior to this, and so the point that I'm making is not that both parties are the same. Of course, that's not true. What I'm saying is that the national security state has been looking at this group for a very long time, well before Trump. And when Trump makes the decision to push the button and attack that boat and generate these target sets and do whatever he's going to do to the other cartel groups, he's relying on an infrastructure that's already been put in place. And as you mentioned a couple moments ago, this is being carried out through what's called Northcom, Northern Command, which was a 9/11 construction designed to prevent the next 9/11, the next terror attack. At the time, the justification for it given, and there are a lot of questions about these things because we obviously in this country have a lot of sensitivity around the military operating domestically. And so the question is, do we really need a command that happens to be overlaps with the domestic continental US and Mexico? And the way that they argued at the time, to the extent that there was any debate at all, was the Bush administration said, okay, this command will allow us to prioritize threats to the homeland. The entire thing was supposed to be homeland defense.
Right.
And so Trump is really tapping into this infrastructure that's been laid, not even just Biden, decades prior that has been designed for someone like him to come along and take full advantage of. And he seems completely willing and happy to be able to use some of these tools that people like Biden and Obama were much less willing to use. But again, Trump can only use the gun that's been placed on the table in front of him and loaded and cocked. And that's kind of what we're seeing here. And what I'm trying to draw attention to in the reporting, because that system existed before Trump and it's going to exist after Trump.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
Francesca, Francesca and Kenny, it always goes back to 9/11. I was talking to folks yesterday about how America was perfectly fine creating this amped up military industrial complex during 9/11 in the aftermath of the worst terrorist attack to go after the Muslims and the Arabs. And many of us at the time, Francesca included, when we were young students, we tried to warn Americans that this loaded gun right now is pointed at Afghanistan, which had nothing to do with 9/11, or Iraq, will be turned against fellow Americans. And what we've already seen, Ken, and what, as you're saying this right now, what's so chilling is if the president says without due process, I can just designate anybody an enemy and then blow them out of the water. Well, that's kind of what they're doing, right? For the past 7 months, Kilmer Abrego Garcia, just 200 people scooped up with brown skin and tattoos. What's to keep this administration with this much power? And I'm so happy you mentioned this, that was given to them by Republicans and Democrats following the aftermath of 9/11. Not only did they keep that loaded gun on the table, Ken, they just gave it more bullets. They're like, oh, you have the 6-bullet magazine? Let's give you a bigger magazine, right? What's to keep Trump now? That the fact that this story is not like the number one news story, because as Francesca said, there's like 18 fires. But Trump could say, due process, I could do whatever I want. Just trust me. Maybe they were carrying migrants, but I'm saying they're carrying drugs. So voila, that's it. Mm-hmm. What's to keep Trump now from using this gun on the American people?
Yeah, the entire legal basis for essentially all of this, the backbone of not just these strikes, but the National Guard deployments throughout the country, the ones he's considering and threatening to do right now, is basically premised on the notion that the migration flow through the southern border is an invasion. And Trump always uses that word. And when I first heard it, I kind of rolled my eyes, and I think a lot of people do. But that is a signal to the national security state that you can treat these guys as foreign combatants on standing of the adversary military. Mm-hmm. And that opens up all kinds of scary powers and privileges. His first day in office, he declared immigration a national emergency. I mean, he's trying to treat this like 9/11. Right. And not only is it not that, there's scarcely been any debate, because I think there's this tendency to look at Trump and say, oh, he's saying these sort of crazy things, not realizing that he may not be Dick Cheney, but there are people in the bureaucracy that hear those things and they have to go and implement them, whether it's in the Department of Homeland Security or the Department of Defense, and that they have they've built up a hell of a colossus for responding to these kinds of things over the last 20 to 25 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we're seeing someone willing to use it now.
Yep.
And I can't tell you how many years I was told, oh, these civil liberties concerns are hypothetical. They're not going to do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, well, yeah, you want to worry about it before it happens, not after, right?
I think it's, before we talk about the war at home, because you've got, some, inside reporting about the, summoning of military forces to Chicago, which is next on the docket. I just want to stay for a moment, because I've covered, basically the cartel violence, but from the perspective of the people who are most affected, which are often are civilians. They have been left to their own devices. They travel north. They try to, seek refuge, obviously, and asylum in the United States. And we have denied that to them. Like, even beyond the mission creep of this could target and is targeting immigrants and migrants and people seeking asylum. This could target people on U.S. soil if they're designated as terrorists, or if they are considered invaders. If you believe that they're only targeting cartels, this is also the wrong way to target cartels. This will inevitably lead to more death of Americans, not just of forces, but let's say there's undercovers. Let's say there's people working at, now, like, it's going to be like every other fucking ham-fisted counterterrorism effort that this country embarks on, which involves a lot of entrapment and sting operations, and then all this bullshit just to get more money and pat yourself on the back. Meanwhile, people continue to suffer, whether it's at the hands of cartel violence, or if you actually cared about addiction or you actually cared about fentanyl, you would do things like have harm reduction programs, have decriminalization so that people don't get locked away forever for being users or for being addicts, right? But so this is as long as drugs can be capitalized on, there will be cartels. So it's either you're going to lead to a hot war. I'm sorry, a hot war with Mexico, forgetting a fucking regime change war. Shout out to Tulsi Gabbard, my girl TG, trying to end them forever wars and joining the Trump administration, a regime change war against Nicolas Maduro.
Yeah, you make a really important point, which is that, I said that this is premised on the notion of an invasion. Another detail I should add is that the basic argument that they make, and I'm sure they're making in classified settings with their military lawyers and things to create a basis for all this, is that it's not just that migrant flow, but the drugs that are coming in. And I think you do have to acknowledge that it's like a horrifying, body count for these drugs. And so I think when Americans look at this stuff, and when there's 40% support for whatever it's going to come out to be, I don't think it's primarily that people are like bloodthirsty or anything. I think it's speaking to real pain, and they've been told these guys are the reason that your kid or your friend or your cousin had this terrible problem. And what's sad about that is, there are cartels and they are coming in, some fashion. They exist. I'm not denying that. But the sad thing is that this isn't going to work because you're national securityizing what is essentially a health problem, however you want to describe it. And so my point is not
problem. I mean, quite frankly, too.
Right. Exactly. I mean, the causal, the reason I am not hooked on fentanyl is not because I'm a better person than anyone else. It's because I have a safety, I have a social system around me that supports me and X, Y, and Z. Those are the things that we have to address.
Yeah.
And I don't think that, for me, for instance, I don't think I didn't do fentanyl because there wasn't a cartel member around me or whatever the theory is. It's not a good explanatory theory for why addiction exists. And, I recognize that it's probably not a simple problem, but just, slamming the hammer down is not going to improve anything, which again is a very serious problem. And I can understand why people are angry about it.
Are you suggesting that the war on terror was not successful, Ken and Francesca, in having democracy bloom in the Middle East and having people embrace the United States as their savior? Are you suggesting that the United States incarcerating more people than any other country on earth has not led to a better, more civilized society where 80% of the people who are incarcerated are poor? Surely, I thought you guys were left, but this is too radical for me, folks. I'm being very this is very snarky, folks. I really appreciate what you Ken, that whole example of the hammer. This is not even a hammer. This is like a bazooka, and it keeps failing. To Francesca's point, it keeps failing.
Well, I can tell you, I talked to a lot of national security people, and even some of the most hawkish ones. None of them think that even this strike that we saw expanded out into a whole list of targets. None of them believe that that's going to appreciably change the flow of drugs, even the hawks among them. So, if it's not working for that, again, the lack of candor in the discussion with the public, I think really impedes what could be opposition to this policy, because we're not talking about the underlying thing. We're just talking about, when you just talk about cartels in a vacuum, you can come up with all sorts of horrifying examples of terrible stuff that they do that induces people to think, yeah, let's go and kill them. But that's not really what the core issue is here. And there's not very much discussion of it because Trump is so good at just running the circus and everybody has to respond to everything he does instead of the real pain that's behind why people respond to it, I think.
Can I have a fact check, Francesca, real quick? Because I heard Ken, some people are saying, you probably know, you know this better than anyone, that we still don't have confirmation that there were actual drugs being smuggled, that it could have just been migrants. Is there confirmation that there were actual drugs there in this boat that was, blown up without any due process?
I haven't seen it. That's just the assertion of the Secretary of Defense and the intelligence that they allege to have. But when people ask, what kind of camera was it? Where in the Caribbean was it? Specifics, he says operational security repeatedly and just waves his hand. But
I'm sure there'll be plenty of evidence to recover.
Yeah, exactly. It's an important question because on this same issue, they have made the argument that the Venezuelan government is directing the migrant flow and the drugs to undermine the American government. And what's really interesting about all this is that we have a unique insight into the intelligence on this question, because under the Freedom of Information Act, somebody requested a Department of National Intelligence assessment on exactly this. And what it found was the opposite. Trump's own intelligence community found the opposite of what they are alleging publicly. They didn't find sufficient evidence to believe that the Venezuelan government is directing these things. That's not to say that, maybe they look the other way, maybe they don't care, but to say that it's some sort of conscious, cognizant plan to, invade the United States there's no evidence for that. And they just say it left and right. And the entire, their whole immigration approach is premised on this.
Yep.
So
what's going to
really
increase
crazy.
immigration? Regime change in Venezuela.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like the drug issue. Migration happens for a complicated set of reasons that people don't want to deal with, that politicians don't want to deal with. And so it's easy so you just create these things that you can scapegoat, and that maybe it feels good to blow away some, alleged cartel members, but it doesn't get at any of the core issue, and it's not going to improve anything.
I mean, I think the other thing we have to understand, and this is something from Johan Grillo, who's an incredible journalist based in Mexico, who's been writing on the drug war and cartel violence, is that he talks about, the United States imports the drugs and exports the violence. That's the agreement with cartels. Because if this country actually experienced the level of cartel violence that people in Mexico or Central America have been subjected to, it'd be unsustainable. It'd be insane. Sometimes it spills over in border towns. Sometimes there'll be a massive shootout. Sometimes shit would happen. But that's not the point. We are the consumers, right? So they keep it sort of clean on this side. It's sort of, and it has been an agreement, between all kinds of, whether it's military, obviously the Mexican military is deeply involved with cartels, but for sure, people on our border, Americans and CBP and whatnot, look the other way, but they can easily, track down the single mom or the mother with a small child or whatever it is. Like, they take aim at those folks. And so I've argued for years that what the United States has been trying to do is actually compete with the cartels to be more violent than them in order to make sure people don't try to immigrate here. That has been the goal. It's deterrence, and it gets people killed. But I want to turn now, before you guys both have to go, to talk about, Ken, some of your writing on, the war at home, which I think we can still draw the through line even back to the war on terror as well. But, this now imminent, probably, federal invasion, I would call it, of the city of Chicago. Where is everything at on this? There's been a lot of it feels like maybe yesterday Trump was trying to, or 2 days ago, Trump was trying to wait to be invited in and be like, you need me, you need me, Brandon Johnson, because he just got handed this defeat in LA saying that the deployment of the National Guard was illegal. But where are things at when it comes to, Chicago and the Trump administration?
Yeah, so I was given a copy of a formal request by the Department of Homeland Security, a political appointee in the Trump administration, to his counterpart in the Defense Department, asking for military support to be sent to a military base in the Chicago area. I forget the name of the base. I think it was a Navy base. And the idea is that they are going to put troop materiel for logistics support, fuel, and using the base to support ICE operations in the greater Chicago area. And that's kind of how they try to get around posse comitatus. They say, oh, we're not actually doing law enforcement. We're just assisting those who are. So therefore, it's not the military engaged in law enforcement. And what's interesting in the case of the Los Angeles ruling that you just mentioned, if you read the ruling, it was pretty interesting. They said that this still violates posse comitatus, which should send a chill down everyone's spine. That's not a phrase I want to hear. Military activity declared in violation of posse comitatus. I mean, you're
posse
getting into
comitatus, meaning you cannot deploy
the military can't. Right. And this, goes right back to the founding of the country, because, that was raised as a specific grievance in the article in the Declaration of Independence because of the British troops stationing in the colonies at the time. Mm-hmm. And so it's sort of ironic to see these guys, draping themselves in the flag and talking about patriotism, just spitting in the face of everything that it's supposed to represent. With these with these deployments in states whose governors don't want them, which in itself is just extraordinary. And if you talk to the National Guards people, as I have probably over a dozen of them, they don't like doing this, and it's not even necessarily partisan. It's just people that are like, yeah, this is stupid and pointless and embarrassing. I don't want to do this.
And
So
yeah, they don't want to be there. I mean, and I remember, a few months ago, probably when Waj and I still had our show, Tom Homan was super pissed at Chicago because the residents knew their rights and weren't opening doors to ICE. And he was big mad. And now, the same thing is happening. They're trying, basically Brandon Johnson and JB Pritzker are trying to inform residents saying, know your rights and all this. The one language piece with Pritzker that I bristle at personally, having been here in LA, is the don't encourage them, they're using any excuse to sort of crack down. So if it could be a sandwich one day, it could be, flipping them off the other day. And that effectively to me sells a citizenry to put up and shut up kind of thing.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like in DC right now with Mayor Bowser, 20 minutes from me, where folks just 2 days ago, the cat came for you, Ken. He was like, I want to hear about the use and abuse of our military to create martial law. Right here in DC, Mayor Bowser, folks, which I thought was extremely shameful, is now open to having permanent relations with this authorized National Guard folks. And I could tell you, Francesca's in LA, I'm right here in Virginia, close to DC. These National Guard members are armed, just straight up walking around collecting trash. There's many armored vehicles. Union Station, if you've never been, is so dangerous, folks. There's a Lululemon there and a Jamba Juice, right? The normalization of the military. And also, Ken, I don't know if you saw that kind of breaking news, and you were actually right about the fact that Pentagon is approving the use of Chicago area Navy base for ICE and possible military operations.
Oh, did that finally break?
Yeah, it came out an hour ago.
Oh, interesting. What outlet?
I saw it in the Washington Post.
Okay, cool.
Jesus.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. And what's interesting about the memo that I got is it showed that they had already sent what's called an advance team. This is like a prep team that will set up the environment for the troops that will come later from DOD, from the military. I think by Tuesday already. So they had already been there by the time this entire debate had happened. It's really humiliating for the governor, and to his credit, Pritzker had been very critical of this, not just this week, but prior to it. But it just shows you the contempt that the White House has for state sovereignty in these cases.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And yes, and even when there isn't a state like DC, Mayor Bowser being like, "Oh, they could stay here forever," and you're just, it's so pathetic. I mean, this is the kind of response that so-called Democrats have, and this time, I mean, again,
they're soft on crime, but then they just concede the entire point that it's like, wait, how is the military? They don't even have authority to shoot unless in self-defense. So this isn't even the right tool, even if what you're doing is trying. So they should just dispute the thing on the whole basis, rather than try to play this game of oh, actually, maybe it'll help.
Can I go ahead, Francesca.
Oh, just really quickly, I just still feel like we are living in the backlash and the failure to capitalize on the 2020 George Floyd uprising, the biggest uprising, the biggest mass movement of my lifetime, beyond Occupy, beyond the anti-Iraq war movements, right?
Largest protest in American history, Francesca.
In American history. And when you don't make real gains on these issues of moving money into, as Ken, you mentioned, a social safety net that actually keeps people safe and keeps people, whether it's education or housing, whatever that might be, a jobs guarantee, you were what's the next level? We already had fucking tons of cops. Let's send in the National Guard. Let's federalize it, And so we're just still living in a backlash to the backlash to the backlash to the backlash. We're just living in a metaverse of backlashes.
Yeah, I think that's well put. On issue after issue that we've even just talked about here, fentanyl, immigration, crime. I mean, these are things that the opposition party needs to articulate what their vision, what their solution to it would be. And instead, what you get is this reactive kind of oh, actually, no, I'm going to do even more of what the other guy wants. And it's you're conceding the whole debate. Advance your own proposal for what the solutions would be, because I think that any serious solution is going to look very unlike any of this. It's not that the military is not responding effectively. It's that they're not the right tool to respond to these various problems with. And I wish there was some attempt to articulate that.
It's always the failure, Ken, like you mentioned and Francesca mentioned, is that Democrats, they appear soft on crime. So instead, they try to go Republican light. And by going Republican light, the Republican base doesn't respect them, just mocks them, and then their base walks away. You saw this with immigration as they voted for the Laken Riley Act. You saw that as they kept quiet after they went after pro-Palestinian students. And now you're seeing, because the one poll that I saw last week, and it could change, it will change, of course, the one poll that Donald Trump was barely kind of even on was tough on crime. And just give it 2 weeks, he's going to go underwater on that as well. So they're like, well, instead of actually standing for something and leading, we're just going to respond and react and be soft. That's what Gavin Newsom did when he invited Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon. And he realized, oh, this didn't work for me. Let me fight back. His poll numbers have gone up. I am very critical of Newsom. I am still skeptical about Newsom's future as a leader. But, I want to connect the dots because you mentioned Stephen Miller, Ken, and I try to bring the receipts also. Stephen Miller in July, when the Wall Street Journal reported that he was the one who unleashed the master armed ICE agents against Home Depot and 7-Eleven, they reported that he actually wanted a conflict. He was the one in July who used the words insurrection. He was the word who used the word invasion to justify the Alien Enemies Act. And as we're seeing the militarization of our cities, our capital, the unleashing of the Gestapo, my words, against the American people, I go back to the word insurrection that he very deliberately used. And to me, Francesca and Ken, this is all like, literally, they're like just paving the way. This is like the world's most helpful Bond villain, just straight up telling James Bond the plot in advance. And James Bond is like, I wonder what you're going to do. Maybe I should be more civil. Like, it seems like martial law. Like, is this not the setup for Donald Trump and Republicans to just start up cracking skulls if people start, maybe, God forbid, Francesca throwing a sandwich or protesting, their voting rights being suppressed?
Well, that's sort of what I was hinting at. As much as I want to give Pritzker his flowers, I also think that one of the biggest things that turned people against Los Angeles coming out and demonstrating for their rights and trying to defend their family members and their communities was because people threw something at a Waymo, like a fucking Waymo got like, I'm sorry, but and that was used as a like, well, see, this whole movement is bullshit. And if only we had not protested, things would have been so much better. That is obviously a lie. And to your point, Gavin Newsom, man, I agree with you. Look, he's done better in the last few weeks. Oops, now he's got a new sweep the homeless encampments initiative here in California. So what is it, man? What does that say to the rest of the country? It says, yes, homeless encampments are a problem, not housing is a problem, right? Like basic healthcare is a problem. The reason that people have to sleep out on the streets, right? Like, let's do initiatives not to sweep encampments, but to make sure people have health clinics. Maybe there's, mobile health clinics for those encampments. And no amount. Okay, that fluff actually is helping me.
Sorry, your crowd, the Bitchuation crowd was demanding the belly rub. They were demanding shots. They even gave money for the shots, and I had to do it. Sorry, Francesca, because you're on a roll. I didn't want to distract you when you were saying important stuff, but the people gave you money for the belly rub, and
there is something more important. Yes, give me super chats. I'll get my cat in this. Ken, lastly, you have been, I think there is value in being someone who covers unpopular topics.
Yep.
It's a lane.
My beat.
It's your beat. But one of the things that you've been unafraid, and I know I've probably bored down so much hate, especially from the Democratic side, is by kind of being on Gerontocracy watch, talking about our aging congresspeople on the Democratic side, our aging senators. And this week, Jerry Nadler, who's 78, says he's not going to seek re-election. You tweeted that per Nadler, he said, quote, watching the Biden thing really said something about the necessity for generational change in the party. And I think I want to respect that. Wow. Big of Nadler, given that
done, Nadler. Well
Nancy
done.
Pelosi's still running for re-election. Give me some of your thoughts on this problem of gerontocracy and our kind of respectability politics preventing us from really calling it what it is.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, it comes from a good place. They think about their own grandparents and experiences that they might have had. But what you've got to remember is these are not ordinary, everyday people. Like, we have a transactional relationship with politicians the same way in which they have a transactional relationship with voters. And so you should approach them more as someone trying to sell you a car than you would your neighbor or your grandparent. And none of that is to say that you can't recognize the humanity that they do have. When Jerry Connolly, who I was very critical of the Democratic Party's decision to give him leadership position on the oversight committee, passed away, I spent some time thinking about it. I ended up writing something about how not only did we deserve better, but he deserved better too. And these, if you watch the video just yesterday that got posted of DC's sole member in Congress, Elizabeth Holmes Norton, gave her first public comments since Trump's deployment of the military in DC, which itself is an extraordinary thing and should really upset people. Because, like, come on, if they're not going to say something about that proximate to when it happens, that's really crazy. But if you look at it, her aide had to tell her, okay, you go up on this podium and then you're going to say things and everything's going to be, she literally said, everything will be fine. I'm right here. It's like, that is just shameful. And how is that not only hurting us, the country?
That's
how is that
DC's sole rep.
Right. How is that good for the person either? They're being humiliated, and it's not good for anybody. That's my point. Is like,
okay, but in the words of Mitch McConnell.
Oh, you know what? 2 points. Cruel but good. Also, Foghorn Leghorn Kennedy.
Yes. Oh God. He's still kicking. He's still
the simpleton who is a lawyer who went to Oxford. Oh, you know that Foghorn Leghorn.
Yeah, I mean it's a painful truth, and again it also speaks to, I think, more broadly the differences between the Republican and the Democratic Party. When there's a Republican who's like getting shine, who's a rising star, they don't shy away from that person. When there's a Democrat that is the same, they're like, no, you got to get past the octogenarians who are ahead of you and who have been ahead of you for decades. These are the real spokespeople.
Yeah, this is a Democratic fixture, and it's not that's not the case with how the Republican Party treats the congressional committees, and it's just like unilateral disarmament, because who's going to have more energy on average, right?
I just want to apologize to everyone. My cat is never really this disruptive, but I think it was just Bilu was really intrigued, so I didn't mean to be disrespectful to Ken or Francesca. The cat was just like
so cute, or
crying to come in, and then usually he sits there pretty good, but he was just like, I'm all up in arms. I don't like our due process being violated or the militarization of our armed forces to be used against the American people. I have a question for you and Ken, Francesca, and if I may outsource. I'm talking to Congressman Raskin in about 8 minutes, and I do want to ask him about Democratic leadership, because a poll came out that a majority of Americans do not have faith in this Democratic leadership, right? Donald Trump, based on what Ken has said, what we've tried to connect the dots, openly telegraphing his plot to militarize the police, right? I'm going to kill people. I'm going to just call them terrorist groups. I don't care about due process. And yet we still don't see a message or a plan by the Democratic leadership, Ken and Francesca, to address this. You're seeing people step up. Pritzker does this and Newsom does that. Westmore comes out. But where is the leadership when it comes to responding to this active threat? And so that's a question I was going to ask Raskin. But if you have any questions for him on your behalf, I have no problem asking him.
I mean, they're parasailing with Richard Branson, but no. Ken, go ahead.
Well, I think that I do want to acknowledge that a lot of the things we've talked about are pretty big problems. But part of being an elected official is that you're going to have some kind of vision, some kind of ambition around offering equally large solutions. And to the extent that I've seen responses, it's been sort of frustrating. Newsom is a good example, where it'll be very performatively mocky and angry. But where's the big idea? Where's the vision here? Yep. Where's something commensurate with the problem? Because these are big problems. Crime is a real problem. Drugs are a very serious problem. So why can't they articulate an equally, ambitious solution to it? Because all I hear is splitting the differences. No, I can do as much as whatever the Republican is doing.
Yeah.
And the Republicans exist for that. What's your idea?
What should our main unifying platform be going forward? Not mention Donald Trump's name.
Beyond not Trump. I'm so sick of hearing after 4 years, and it didn't work, of just Trump. Like, yes, people's views on Trump are what they are. I don't know how static that is at this point. He's a known quantity.
But you know what scares me, Francesca, based on what you and Ken are saying, and I think we're on the same point, is when a candidate steps up and stands for something, like Zoran Mamdani, right? What he stands for is very popular, and the Democratic establishment says, not you, we'll burn you down.
Well, and Ken posted the other day, Tom Swazi of New York said, Zoran Mamdani and every other Democratic Socialist should create their own party because I don't want that in my party. And I don't disagree. Okay, I'm just going to put this out there.
This is Francesca's independent. This is her going to go for it, Francesca. Just go for it.
No, I mean, I do think that the Democrats are rudderless and the people with the biggest ideas are the only ones that are keeping this party afloat. I mean,
what was the biggest response? I'm sorry, I'm just so passionate about this issue.
Go ahead.
Wait, what was the response to Mamdani? They said, oh, you can't actually do a rent freeze. It's like the leadership is getting angry that someone has an ambitious idea. It's like Trump came in and said all this stuff. We're going to have all these deportations. He did it. And you know, that's probably logistically not easy to do. And did the Republican leadership say, well, how are you going to deport all these people? No, they didn't. They said, well, you know, let's let her rip. So it's just my question to him would be, what is the aversion to big ideas and just doing media generally? I don't see them articulating. All I see of them is reacting. And to the extent that they do any, I would credit to Raskin. He's one of the few that actually does media, and he's talking to, you know, you, and you're not like a controlled, like, kind of astroturf person like he
does have a lot of chorus funding though.
Other than I do not have any chorus funding, and I'm offended. I have to ask you this quick question. I want to ask you,
if you had chorus funding and didn't give me chorus funding, I would be so fucking mad. I would never talk to you again. Just kidding. I would reject that money. I would.
Can I ask you all money? Were you all offended like me that I didn't even get approached? I didn't even get an email. Why not me?
I'd like to be asked, so I can say no.
Yeah, it's like getting carded. You want to know someone's right.
You know,
I mean, I would have said no, but can you not have asked? And you know why, Francesca? I think they didn't ask us. I think it's because of Israel-Palestine. That's what I think.
No, I've known that pretty explicitly. But yeah, I think the other thing to ask Raskin, because I think, to Ken's point, the idea that they have that they are simply rebranding is neoliberalism. It's just abundance. And it's the Ezra Klein, you know, even though I know he's been better on Palestine lately, but like, it's abundance. It's maybe we'll do fewer regulations. Maybe we'll get our crypto money. And so I kind of want to ask him, what poll in the Democratic Party do you see winning this fight? Is it going to be abundance and kind of this like techno rebrand of, I would argue, austerity politics? Or is it going to be, you know, democratic socialism? And who wins that fight? And what do you say to Tom Swazi, who says democratic socialists should create their own party? I mean, this is the problem, obviously, is like that party would not have legs without, you know, an incredible, it has to be local, number one, and it wouldn't have legs, obviously, because a lot of people are just like gonna vote D no matter what. But if anyone's to do it, to be fucking honest with you, Zoran, who's built this intense following in one particular place, to the point where if someone saw Cuomo next to D and Zoran next to Independent, they would vote for Zoran. Like, I'm confident that Zoran would win that, even if Cuomo clinched the Democratic. That's just me, where I'm coming from.
We're on the same page. I think you all, thank you. I appreciate that. I think you've articulated what I wanted to ask him as well, is that, you know, faith in the Democratic Party is gone. Leadership, faith is gone. What do you stand for? You're always reacting and you're not winning. And when someone steps up and stands for something, you crush them. Not Raskin. He did a fantastic job yesterday against Nigel Farage. I don't know if you saw that. That was really good. But, you know, maybe you should run for leader. I'll ask him that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I would just stress, like, looking at polling on immigration. It's so frustrating to me that the party looks at these things as though it's written in stone. It's so dynamic. Things change. You can change people's minds about things.
Yes.
And we literally have just seen that happen on the immigration question.
Yes.
I mean, it was like, you know, really high level of support, at least in the general sense of deportations. And then it's just completely flipped. So it's like, you can't just accept the reality that your opponent has created. You've got to create a different one.
Yes, exactly.
Francesca, I got to run. They're telling me they're ready for me. Forgive me.
Bye, Waj. And
bye, all. Thank you so much.
Everybody, I'm going to be still streaming on his Substack even if he leaves. But become a paid member of The Left Hook. Become a paid member of Ken's Substack. Ken, where can people find that?
I'm at kenklippenstein.com.
kenklippenstein.com. Go there. I mean, look, the algorithm on Substack is really booty. Like, it's bad, but I like your page is excellent. I'm like, oh, these are all
yeah, it's just email. I don't even go on this site that much, to be honest. I use the chat feature Every time I have like one insane item a day that I'll like send out, just something that enrages me. Yesterday, like just to give you an example, I think today was the Swazi clip, the one that you were just talking about, where he says Mamdani should go in a different party. And then a couple days ago, it was the rep from a member of Congress, I should say, from DC. So there's no shortage of these things. But other than that, it's like an email thing. So
it's a good subscription. Everybody go there and support Ken's work. Again, we need to support real journalists, and Ken is one of those people. And your brand, unimpeachable. Keep going. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you all for being here. If you're still here, Bitchuation Room podcast, listen as a podcast. You can also become a patron. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room is my personal preference. Wait till your damn it. I'm telling him to wait till his audio finishes. I've got to stop. I'm gonna stop this. Soon. Robert said Obama droned to death 2 U.S. citizens. Trump is going to make that the good old days. That's true. Quesadilla says Frantifa, name-dropping Mexican journalist doing the real work. Well, he's a British journalist, but he is in Mexico. Tanya Dodgers, thank you for giving a membership. Appreciate you. Manuel says the economy is great for fasting. Oof. Gary Cooper, mission creep makes it sound accidental. The whole point is to enable a fascist military in the United States. Agreed. Tropical Ding Dong says, good example of what Ken is talking about was Biden's draconian border bill that Trump outflanked him on. Yes. And thank you, Vitingale, for being a member for 29 months. Holy crap. We'll see you next Tuesday. Stay tuned for long form videos from me, and make sure to watch that RFK Jr. hour-long deep dive. I promise you there are jokes. I promise you it's fun.